Hello, I'm Stewart for Expansions.com, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the great U.S. Central Shakeout, which I mentioned to you last time, but with which I have a lot more information to describe to you because it's very important that you know about this thing. I'm also going to be talking about protection techniques in relation to the great quakes and other things, and then Janet is going to be talking to you about fluffy, perfect rice and fermented organic vegetables. So stay tuned, this is going to be a really interesting podcast. But to begin, let me go into more detail about what we're going to see happen right here in the central U.S. And I mentioned in the last report that it's called the Great U.S. Shakeout, a central U.S. shakeout. And that is going to occur at the end of April 2011 and into May 2011. And as we know, 2011 is the 200th anniversary of the Great New Madrid earthquake that occurred here in the southeastern part of Missouri and was felt for much of the United States. It was one of the largest seismic events in recorded history, and it happened over a several-month period. It actually was 3 different earthquakes. There was one on December 16th, 1811, which was approximately 8.1. That was followed on January 23rd, 1812 by an 8.2 earthquake. And finally on February 7th, 1812 was a 9.0 right here in central United States. It was felt to the Canadian border, to the Gulf of Mexico, west to the Rockies, and it made church bells chime and ring in Boston. That's how big it was. That's quite an incredible chunk of real estate to be rocking and rolling from one earthquake. But here's the interesting thing that I wanted to tell you about synchronicity. You know, that great shakeout that they're having at the end of this month is a simulation of a coming great earthquake that will strike the central United States. And so people are reporting to me and to others that FEMA is getting ready with hundreds of thousands of body bags, sleeping tents, food that will not spoil, all kinds of things like this. But my feeling is a lot of that might be used in this simulation because almost 2 million or more than 2 million people are participating in this simulated earthquake to strike the U.S. You know, individuals, families, businesses, they're all going into the simulation to see what should they do, how should people behave and react if a great earthquake again strikes the central United States. And so what I need to tell you though, that first one, December 16th, 1811, you know what happened that night right before the earthquake struck? A huge comet was sailing right across the sky and was seen by everybody over the eastern and central United States. And that reminded me that I wrote about this in my news this week, that the comet Elenin is on its way towards the Earth and is supposed to be in the vicinity of our moon, or just outside the orbit of our moon, around October of this year, 2011. So here we have another comet coming towards the Earth, just like it happened 200 years ago. Will there be a repeat of the same thing happening? Well, we'll find out before the end of the year. But you know, there were precursors to this great earthquake. It didn't just happen. In fact, there are reports back from 1811 that said there were shaking and rumbling going on not only in Missouri and Tennessee, but even in Georgia and South Carolina for days and weeks before the earthquake struck. And people noted in the central U.S. that huge flocks of carrier pigeons would stay in the air. Sometimes they said for days at a time there'd be clouds of these birds just hanging, and they would refuse to come back to the ground. So that was a precursor of what was going on. People also noticed that the ground kind of felt warm. The Mississippi River felt warmer than it should have been because it was starting to freeze for the winter. And the other interesting thing about these quakes is that when they struck, they lasted a continuous 15 minutes of moving and rolling. Now it's unheard of. In fact, there have never been earthquakes before or after of a magnitude like that, where the ground moved incessantly for 15 solid minutes. The worst I've ever heard is 3 or 4 or 5 minutes at a time, even in the Japan earthquake. So if that's the case, that means the seismic or tectonic structures beneath the central U.S. in this New Madrid fault line are extremely different than in probably any other place in the world. And I mentioned to you that there is something called the Creton, which is the old tectonic plate that comes down through the St. Lawrence Valley into the New Madrid fault line through Texas, Oklahoma, and then comes up again. That is what the border of this earthquake is about. But what's happening is the eastern part of the U.S. and the western part of the U.S. are being pulled in different directions. So most earthquake fault lines, it's where one is butting up against the other and causing pressure. But in this particular location, the fault line is being pulled apart. The earth is being pulled apart, which is very different. So there's different dynamics involved, and it can create different kinds of scenarios. When the third 9.0 quake hit on February 7th, 1812, the Mississippi River went the other direction. It flowed opposite of what it usually did. It created huge lakes in Kentucky and Tennessee. There were countless Indian villages along the banks that were completely wiped out. No one even knows how many people died. There was a wall of water several meters high in the Mississippi that flushed over everything. Islands in the Mississippi vanished. And there was actually 3 waterfalls that were created during that quake, and so the Mississippi was unnavigable for many, many months afterwards until those falls from the earthquake kind of flattened out over time, and other tremors flattened them out. So basically what I'm telling you is you need to prepare. There's an 11-state area that's working on this great central U.S. shakeout simulation, but there are other states involved that will not be affected as severely, but will still feel strong shaking from a magnitude 8 or 9 on the Richter scale. That's even worse than we've seen in California and other places. So be prepared for all of that. Also, wanted you to know that, and I'm going to do this in future podcasts, I'm going to teach you how to build yourself up physically with exercise so that you can withstand days, weeks, months of perhaps difficulties. If your house is damaged, if you have no water, no electricity, etc., I'm going to be showing you information about that. And in fact, later on this month and in next month, we will have a special guest who is an expert on survival techniques in the wilderness, and he will be talking to us about how to take care of ourselves if such an event takes place. I also mentioned this week about this area here in Michigan where we were threatened by severe weather, tornadoes, hail, strong winds, and I also mentioned that I used the protection techniques over this house, over the people that needed to be protected, and over the region. And as I mentioned in my news on expansions.com, the storm literally, when it came through this area, there was this huge line of storms that caused tornadoes in Wisconsin, even in Indiana. When it came here, it kind of like separated or thinned out. So all we got was a little bit of rain. We heard lightning off in the distance, and thunder, and that was it. So the technique really works. Use your protection technique, get your template, we have a 3D animation online, expansions.com, go look and get it. It works and it will save you. So on that note, how about something positive and delicious? We're going to go now watch Janet do her perfect fluffy rice and her fermented vegetables, which are quite incredible and good for you. So stay tuned and we'll be right back with an amazing cooking show for you.
Hi, this is Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow again. I promised to tell you how to make fluffy rice, perfect rice every time, and it is so easy. All you have to be able to know how to do is boil water and turn your oven on. That's how easy it is. Now, you notice I said oven, not stovetop, because yes, my rice that I make is made in the oven, and it's wonderful, it's easy, turns out perfect every time. So today I'm going to show you what I use. I have a casserole bowl here with a tight fitting lid, a measuring cup, and I'm going to mix my rice, brown rice. I put in this is 3.5 cups total. So I'm going to put in about half of brown rice and half of wild rice. Wild rice is also delicious for cereal, breakfast cereal in the morning. You can use it for a variety of things. I like to use it in my stir fries, anything that you can use rice for. So I mix it together. So I have 3.5 cups. You can use any amount of rice that you want. Move into my mixing bowl and kind of mix it together a little bit. And my water, twice the amount. So 3.5 cups of rice, 7 cups of water. And this is pre-boiled. This is a 4-cup measuring cup, and I need 4 cups the first time, 3 cups the second time. So it's 2 to 1. If you have 1 cup of rice, you put in 2 cups of water. It's that easy. So I have 3.5 cups of rice, 7 cups of water. I put my casserole lid on. I've got my oven preheating. Once it hits 400, I just open up my oven and I put it in. And I bake it for 35 to 40 minutes until the water is absorbed. You pull it out, you set it on top. Sometimes the water will be a little bit floating around. You just kind of let it sit for a while. It'll absorb the water and you're ready to go. It's perfect. So perfect fluffy rice every single time. Hi, most of you know about sauerkraut, and a lot of you probably don't like sauerkraut. Some of you may, some of you don't. Well, interestingly enough, I was always raised with a sauerkraut that comes out of a can and thought it was the most disgusting thing in the world. But interestingly enough, when I began reading about what real sauerkraut is, which is really fermented vegetables, it's a totally different food than what you get in your local supermarket. So I took it a step further and I started making what I call fermented vegetables. And it's exceedingly easy to do and exceedingly nutritious because it's full of good enzymes that help aid the digestive system. You can do it with your beautiful organic vegetables that you get from your supermarket or your grower. I want to show you what the finished product looks like. I pack mine in a jar. This particular one is similar to the recipe I'm going to make with you today. This one has cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli, turnips, onion, garlic, and collard greens in it. So let me open up the jar. I'm going to show you what it looks like. And it's delicious. You can eat it on your hard-boiled eggs, your Scotch eggs. You can eat it on your burgers. You can eat it the way that you would any particular condiment. But it's wonderful for your digestive system. You can eat it plain right out of the jar. It's delicious. I'm going to set this over here, and I'm going to show you how I make it, which is so easy. Now, for those of you, if you're one person in your family or a small family, you can make a lot of it. I usually start with a minimum of about 5 pounds of vegetables. So 5 pounds of vegetables, keep that in mind. And again, here's the cabbage. I take it out of my water bath that I use with the food grade hydrogen peroxide. Cauliflower. Set it over here. Onion. And I like mine spicy, so if I had it, which I don't, I would put in a jalapeno pepper or 2. Here's a turnip that's in there. Remember I told you how easily you can peel your garlic by soaking it and you can get that skin right off. Broccoli. And here's one of my collard greens just so you have an idea of what that is. But you can put in a variety. You can do beets, you can do carrots. We don't use that because it's a little higher carb, but you can do that. You can use, again, the jalapeno peppers. What else have I done? Celery is good in there. So kind of any kind of vegetable you want. You could do parsnips. You can do Jerusalem artichokes. You can use your imagination. But you put these together in a blend that you like. Now you can make your vegetables any cut that you like. We happen to like the little shredded cuts like what you see here, because it's easy to pull out of the jar, it's easy to pack down when you're fermenting. So I use the grated part on my Cuisinart when I do my vegetables. I always make sure it's unplugged when I put it together. And don't plug it in until I'm ready to use it. So I'm going to just run my cabbage through really fast. Now I'm going to put my shredded vegetables, my grated vegetables in my mixing pot. I have my grated turnips, I put the peel in and everything, and I have an onion mixed in with there, and my garlic is all in this batch. That goes in my pot. I have my broccoli, which I also ran through the grater, into my pot. I have my head of cauliflower, which has been grated. And I have my collard greens. So all of that goes into the pot. Okay, once you have your greens in, you want a nice heavy mixing spoon. And I have 3 tablespoons, not teaspoons, 3 tablespoons of Celtic sea salt that I'm going to mix in here. And what the salt does is it starts pulling out the moisture from your vegetables. So even though it starts looking very dry, you put the salt in and you start mixing it all together, and pretty soon you will see the juices start to come out. Now it's very important that for doing your fermenting vegetables that you have fresh vegetables, that they are not sitting if at all possible, because they're full of the most juice and nutrition, and that's going to give you a really nice finished product. Okay, you can see that, remember how full this was when we began. It was up here practically 2/3 of the pot filled. Now that the liquids are coming out and the salt is pulling everything and blending it together, now actually it's packed down to about 1/3 of the pot. So once you've got it all nice and moist, and you'll see as you're doing it, as you work with your vegetables, sometimes you can see the juices if you have really juicy, but like things like cauliflower, some that I've used, broccoli, they're not loaded with as much juice as say if you were using carrots or beets in there. So that makes a difference. So we're going to set this aside. And now what I've done, you can go buy a crock if you want. They're expensive. So I went to my local discount store and I bought a glass bowl for about $5. And I have a plate, which I pulled out of my cupboard. Again, you can probably find a $2 or $3 plate at your local discount store. We're going to take these vegetables, we're going to pack it in here, make sure all the air is out. We're going to put this plate on top and this jug of water, which I use, again, very cheap weight, to help push all the air out, and we're going to cover it and we're going to be done. It's very fast, it's very easy, and you're going to be amazed. Okay, so we're just going to finish getting it out here. Once we have our bowl filled, we're going to pack it down, because if air gets in there, that's what causes your vegetables to rot. So you don't want that to happen. We want it to ferment. If you can hear that, it's a little squishy there. That's the juices that are already starting to come up. Once you take it out of the fermentation bowl, it does need to be refrigerated, or if you want it to keep fermenting, if you like it a little stronger, you can ferment it as long as you like, but you just have to make sure it's packed down. I'm going to take my plate and put it on top and continue to push the air out. Do you see the juices coming up again? Okay, so now that I know it's all covered with juices, there's no room for air in there anymore. Again, you have to take a heavy weight. I choose a gallon of steam distilled water, so that's what I have handy. I put it on top, and then you have to wrap it. So before you wrap it, I'm going to do it here on my stove so you can see, but you can, if you have a basement area, if you have a dark corner, that's where it needs to go, and it will sit on your counter for, I like to leave mine about 10 days. 7 days is when really you can start eating it. If you want it a little bit stronger, you can go up to 2 weeks, a month, as long as you like. You can taste it at various intervals, whatever works for you. But we are usually so ready to eat this by the time that 10 days rolls around. I don't usually let it go more than that. So we just wrap it, and that way it allows all the good bacteria to grow. So anyway, that's how you easy peasy, again, make good nutritious food for yourself. Do a quantity, because this way you don't have to do it so often. Have it for a gift for your friends. It's amazing, amazing food. And do something good for yourself.